Mics are on. Screen, audio. Are we ready, Madam Chair?
I will call this September 7th, 2022 Port and Commerce Advisory Board regular meeting to order. Will everybody stand and join me in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Amen.
Mr. Clerk, will you take roll?
Okay, roll call. Paquette.
Here.
Wilkers.
Here.
Hughes.
Here.
Atwood. Smith.
Here.
Jaffa.
Here.
O'Regan.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Great. Next we have citizens' comment on any subject except those scheduled for public hearing. Those who have signed in will be given first opportunity to speak. Time is limited to 3 minutes per speaker, 36 time total. Mr. Clerk, is anyone signed in to speak?
There's nobody signed in.
Thank you. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to speak that did not sign in? Okay, seeing none, we'll move ahead. The approval of the agenda and consent agenda. I need a motion and a second.
I'll motion, Madam Chair.
I'll second. Okay. Mr. Clerk, can we vote on?
I'd
are there
like
changes to the agenda?
In our statement of the agenda, I would like the chair to clarify whether that is the correct spelling of her name.
O'Regan?
And if,
The correct spelling of my new last name is Oreagan.
right, but why do I have,
It's still on there that way. On the side of the agenda. It's still.
On this side.
can we get that corrected?
Sure thing, we can fix that.
Thank you.
Any other changes to the agenda?
Okay, so voting on today's agenda and consent agenda. Jaffa.
Yes.
Paquette.
Yes.
Hughes.
Yes.
Wilkers.
Yes.
Smith.
Yes.
And O'Regan.
Yes.
Okay, today's agenda and consent agenda are approved, and approved on the consent agenda is the approval of the May 4th, 2022 regular meeting minutes and the June 8th, 2022 regular meeting minutes.
Thank you. Next is special orders, presentations, and reports. There are no proclamations or awards, so we'll continue with reports. Does the administration have a report to share?
Hey, good afternoon, PACAB board members and Madam Chair. This is Stephen. I'm sitting next to Norm. We're up in Anchorage right now at the Denima Center for the Grant Symposium. Apologies that we're not there in person with you guys all. Some pretty good information that's coming out from various state and federal agencies that we will provide you guys in the next PACAB administration report as well. I guess first and foremost, welcome back from hiatus. We've got a lot of really interesting stuff that's been going on, especially on two of the items that we're going to discuss later in the meeting for the heat loop project and the bench. I guess the other item on page 3 in my report was regarding the Recreation Center feasibility study. Business Advisors is wrapping up looking at the construction costs and the operation and maintenance forecast for a public recreation facility. The draft report for what the facility what the community wants out of the facility has been provided to you guys all, and really I think what we heard from the community through the survey work that Victus did was that the community really wants a multi-use facility. And I think one of the interesting things about that, as far as PACAB's Commission of Commerce, is that the multi-use space is 2 basketball courts, or it could be used for 4 volleyball courts. If you wanted to use it for like a public, a banquet or something like that, it could feed up to 1,500 people. So it would provide a space where conventions, banquets, community events, public movie night, and there's a whole host of things that could drive commerce and economic development in our community that space could be used for. The other thing is there's like a small child care facility that's possibly going to be included into that mix. And so when we've got that final report, I'll provide it to you guys directly. And Victus is going to be up in Steward on the 28th of September. That's a Wednesday. They're going to do a noon meeting in council chambers and then a 5:30 meeting to city council. And we really want as much public participation as possible. So it would encourage anyone that's available to attend those meetings on the 28th to do so. And I'll take any questions.
Does anyone have any questions for Stephen? Okay, it looks like there aren't any. Thank you very much. Can we reflect that we've been joined by Dwayne Atwood, our new member?
Okay, welcome, Dwayne.
Yeah, and I'm sorry to arrive late. Again, I'm Dwayne Atwood. I'm the work manager for the Alaska Railroad. Who was on the call?
That was Stephen, the assistant city manager.
Okay.
He just gave the administration's report,
Thank you.
and that's where we are in the agenda.
Gotcha.
Okay, this is Norm. I just want to get my report there. When there's any questions, let me know.
It's confusing, that says the 28th and then...
Does anyone have any questions for Norm? His report is on page 49 of our packet. You go ahead, member. Okay.
Norm, were the 5 or the 4 vessels that sank, were they all participating in the Derby?
2 were, one was a charter boat, one was a skiff, and the other one was another skiff, and another guy brought his boat down for a derby. So I would have to say 2 of those were.
Okay.
Any other questions for Norm, the harbor report? Okay, seeing none, we will move on. Thank you, Norm. We appreciate that update. And next is the Chamber of Commerce report by Kat Sorensen. Welcome.
Hi everybody, welcome back. First, I apologize for not getting a written report. I didn't realize it was September already. But I will be moving forward with a written report moving forward from this meeting. But just a brief overview of the summer in general. Despite 4 boats sinking, we saw the Salmon Derby as a success. The weather was pretty wild for a few days there, so numbers were a little bit down. But everybody who was able to get out and enjoy had a good time on the water. We did have lower fish returns than we've seen in the past, so our fish restoration funds are a little bit lower, but we're working with Cook Inlet Aquaculture to remedy that. We also, seems like ages ago, but the Mount Marathon race in 4th of July was a huge success as well. We saw 25,000 visitors a day across the 4th of July weekend, which is lower than 2019 numbers, so we're still getting back to pre-COVID numbers. But across the board, we saw it as a really great community event. We brought back a lot of games and family-oriented things outside of the race that seemed to be a big hit and make the people of Steward happy all weekend long. So we're really excited about that. As for visitor center and commerce things going on, we saw an average of 2,500, actually more than that, about nearly 3,000 visitors a month over the course of the summer come through the visitor center front doors. We've also started tallying phone calls, and across the board we have about 400 phone calls on trip planning and just questions in general throughout each month. We were open 7 days a week with an auxiliary visitor center at the Derby booth in the harbor. So we had 2 locations where we would answer where we had visitor information available. We're excited to move forward with the Derby booth as a more robust visitor center next year. We were trying it out and it seemed to work. And just in general was able to provide a lot of really great information to visitors all summer long. As for some other fun things, our EV charging stations should be installed soon. I've been going back and forth for months with installers and companies and looking forward to getting that up and running so that we can provide that utility to the people of Seward. And moving forward, I'm really excited about the results of the RFP, the results that Stephen was talking about. Having a space for conventions and events is something that we at the Chamber of Commerce get asked for a lot, and it would be exciting to have a place that can fit that many people. In November, I'll be going down to the Pacific Marine Expo and bringing some representatives from the partners in Seward with us. So Norm and I think Dwayne, and then a representative from AVDEC will be coming down as well. So that'll be really exciting to go talk about the Pacific Marine industry down there. Other than that, we're going to ramp up for a good winter season and start winter weekends again and focusing on some stuff outside of visitor services. So if there's ever anything you guys need from me, let me know.
Thanks, Kat. Anybody have any questions for Kat?
Yep.
Go ahead.
Number one, I have 2. Number one, have you coordinated at all with Kenai Economic Development on the expansion of the 6G, 5G, the
Yes.
wireless?
Yes, so I met with Tim a few weeks ago when he was in town, and we've been putting that in our newsletter and sharing that on the Chamber of Commerce page as well. And any local who comes through the door, we give them the sheet, and I'm kind of addicted to seeing what my 4G, 5G speeds are wherever I am. So we've been working on that with Tim. And for anyone who doesn't know, it's expanding the 5G access or testing our 5G capability in each area so that there's a map of what that 5G speeds are like, which gives us a better opportunity to get expansion on that at a federal level. So.
Okay. The second, have you had any feedback from the visitors through the door or elsewhere on what the impact of the Seward Highway road projects has been on visitation into Seward?
We have not had any feedback on that, actually. I haven't heard anything too overwhelming. I think a lot of the visitors are warned right off the gate about the highway, so they come to expect it. The main highway feedback that we have is a lot of people who accidentally end up here that wanted to go to Homer because they always take the wrong turn. And I say, well, good for you. You ended up here. Much better. But no, we haven't heard any major feedback about the highways. More local feedback.
Remember, Kat?
Have you had any conversations with Tel-Alaska now that they're not Tel-Alaska in terms of them upgrading their service, bringing fiber to the community? Have you heard any of that?
I haven't heard anything in particular from them. I've reached out mostly for our purposes as well, since we utilize them in some regards, but haven't had a general conversation with them. But it could be something I put on the docket coming up. It's a good idea.
Anyone else? I don't have a question, but I do want to say that I have heard positive things about the presence down at the Derby booth.
Oh, awesome.
So yeah, some people were really excited about that.
Yeah, we're thinking next year too. I want to get all of the people who work down there jackets so they can walk around and say like, ask me a question. We just definitely want to take as much pressure off the workers and people who are doing something completely different so that they don't have to answer all those questions. So feel free to send people our way next summer too.
That's great, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you all. I'm excited to be back.
Thanks, Kat. Okay, we are moving on. There are no presentations scheduled for today.
I have a question.
Yes, Member Jaffa.
Now that our mayor, Alaska Railroad representative is leaving, are we going to get a railroad report?
May I answer that?
Please.
Yes, so I'm Dwayne Atwood, report manager. The answer is yes. I have a written report for you today. although it's too late to amend the agenda.
You can pass it out.
Okay,
We'll
I'll
take
pass it
that
out.
down. Yeah,
The answer is yes.
Thank you. Perfect.
and then going forward, we'll have it on the agenda.
Thank you, Clerk. Thank you, Dwayne. Do you want to pass that out now, or do you
Sure,
want to?
I will do that.
While we're still in the report time, and people can glance over it and see if they have any questions.
Yes. Take one and pass it along.
And thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Would you like to go over this?
Oh, sure, I can speak to it for a moment if that's all right.
Yep.
Yeah, so firstly, we're talking a little bit about just our regular vessel traffic. Couple of things. We did have the Sekuliak in a couple of times this summer, and then we did have the U.S. Coast Guard Healy in, mostly for R&R. It's about 100 young folks in town. It was a nice visit. They managed to get here between cruise ships, so that was good. We have had some freight train activity, including pipe and proppant, which is going northward. And so that activity has been pretty good. The last Coastal Classic is scheduled for September 18. I may get a question about how the train operated here the last couple of days because of rising water in the Kenai Lake area, and we did briefly have the train stop in Moose Pass with coaches going back and forth, but I understand that train operations are back to normal today. Of course, we'll just wait for the weather and see what happens. And then cruise ships, 74 dockings this year. The last ship is September 30, I believe. The next ship coming in is number 66, and we'll have 2 more double ship days. So we're getting toward the end of the season, but there's still activity. And then just looking forward to next year, 94 ships scheduled, and on 2 of those days we'll currently have 3 ships in port. So that'll bring in some logistical challenges, but we're looking forward to it. And we're also looking at the cruise dock replacement project. 65% plans are currently being reviewed in-house, and I will provide information as soon as possible on that. And currently, construction is slated to begin at the end of the next cruise ship season. So it'll be normal operations pretty much through this winter and the spring and summer, coming spring and summer. And then Harbor Master Regis may have mentioned this Harbor Master and Port Administrators Conference. I plan to attend that. It'll be in Nome this year. And that's all I have.
Thanks. Are there any questions? Go ahead, Member Jeff.
I tried a question. Well, 2 things I frankly welcome as a board member and as a representative of PACAB, or the railroad, pardon me. There were 2 interruptions in service to the railroad. This last one was from the pothole from the Jackalope rising water, but there was one a week before that that had to do with a rock slide. Is this indicative of some of the issues that we're going to be facing with climate issues, and can the railroad look at some of the infrastructure money maybe to mitigate some of that problem?
To answer the larger question about climate, I will say yes. Maybe there'll be more climate challenges in the future. I don't know. But on the second question, yes, I'll have to look into that. I don't have an immediate answer for you.
Well, in Moose Pass, we'd encourage the railroad to stop there as often as possible. It's wonderful to go down there and both times the train's been there, I've been able to go down there and listen to the hum of the engines. We love it in Moose Pass, which is a railroad town. That's all I got.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, now we will move on to, there is no old business, so we will move right into new business. And the first item on our agenda under new business is to elect a chair. And so first we will open nominations from the floor. Member Jaffa.
I will take the previous member Lawrence's position and nominate Brandy O'Regan to the chair, if she'll have it.
I'll second.
I will accept that. Are there any other nominations? Okay, nominations are closed. Do I make the motion? Oh, can you make that a motion?
A motion? I make a motion to elect Ms. O'Regan to chair. Is that what you need to hear?
Second.
Okay, can we take a vote on that, Mr.?
So do I pass these out or raise your hand?
Just vote.
Okay,
Once vote.
so we're doing a vote on electing O'Regan as chair. Jaffa,
Yes.
Paquette,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Wolkers,
Yes.
Atwood,
Yes.
Hughes,
Yes.
and O'Regan?
Yes.
Okay. So O'Regan has been elected as chair.
Thank you, everyone. Then the next order of business is to elect the vice chair. I would like to start the nominations with Member Paquette as
I'll
vice
second.
chair. Are there any other nominations? Okay, I will make a motion that we elect Member Paquette as the vice chair for the term ending July 2023.
I'll second that.
Can we
Okay,
have a vote?
voting for Paquette as vice chair. Hughes,
Yes.
Atwood,
Yes.
Wolkers,
Yes.
Paquette,
Yes.
Smith,
Yes.
Jaffa,
Yes.
O'Regan.
Yes.
Paquette has been elected vice chair.
Thank you.
Quick and easy. By the way, I'm about to go on vacation for about a month. Okay, so the next item on our agenda is to discuss the status of the heat loop project. There is some information starting on page 60 in our packet, and I believe that we can start with comments from Member Jaffa, and there may be people in the audience here as well.
Point of order. Would it be possible to suspend the regular order of business and allow the spokesman for the ad hoc group to directly speak?
Is that allowable? Absolutely.
As long as there's no objection.
Are there any objections to suspending the regular rules and hearing from the chair?
No.
Okay, seeing none, we will proceed.
Bob Linville, Steward resident, one of the members of the ad hoc committee. I turned out a little sheet here, and I'm going to read through it. Basically, the heat loop project was initiated in 2015 with the work of previous council mayor and the help of the administration and Your Clean Energy. Steward received a $725,000 grant, which was received by Council Resolution 2018-89. Here we are 4 years later, and now that grant is still in effect. It's just that we have to show progress to keep it, and it's reviewed every 3 months. We still have it. So with the cost increases, the project needs to be kind of, we need to pursue it through more grants. So. And with that in mind, PACAB requested the council to form the committee, which it did. PACAB passed a resolution to do so on the 16th of February. Council approved a resolution to that effect on the 3rd of March. And the 7-member committee was charged with identifying sources of funds for the heat loop project. 5 committee members were appointed by PACAB at the 4/20/22 meeting, and 2 were appointed shortly thereafter. The members are Bruce Jaffa, Chair, Griffin Flush, Vice Chair, Mary Tugis, Recorder, Darrell Schaefer-Meyer, Levanta Weddington, Mike Brown, and Bob Linville. The work of the committee to date, we had our first meeting on the 5th of May at Fire Hall. We selected a chair, vice chair, recorder. We will follow all Robert's rules, Steward rules for posting and recording, and all meetings have an agenda, printed documents, and minutes. The ad hoc committee has had 10 meetings, an average of 1.5 hours. That's 100 hours of volunteer time right there, and we've all put in our own time. Most meetings have had a full 7-member attendance in person or by virtual connection, and that attendance has included the city mayor, the manager, the assistant manager, local interested citizens. We've created a website which you can visit. You have to type into the address bar heatloopseward.weebly.com, and you will get there. If you Google it, you won't see it. That's just the state of the website right now. It just describes the project, and it has the resumes of the committee members. We have utilized Zoom and Google Meets to allow us all to participate at every meeting. And we've had, that has also allowed participation in presentations from R&M Consultants, Pure Clean Energy, National Renewable Energy Laboratory, and others. And we have investigated and supported existing contractual arrangements by the city with R&M to write grant applications, and supported their contract with Pure Clean Energy for technical advice, and with HMS to update the project estimate. We've reviewed the long-range potential applications of this technology, and as it would support the Ford building grant, and possibly even more of our event kind of it. We've attended the Infrastructure and Energy Symposium in Anchorage in June. It was sponsored by Senator Murkowski, and we've gathered letters of support from many different entities, citizens, advocates of industry, institutions, and we have to do this to qualify for a grant in the end. We've registered with all the grant sources so far we can, and continue to look at all new opportunities. We're developing a social media outreach to provide information to gather more support. We've supported the grant application process, which is currently being pursued by the City of Seward. It's DOE, Office of Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy Funding Opportunity, DOE FOA 2632. This grant, this particular one will be our first one the city's pursued since the committee's been formed. And it's good to go through it because as it's written, a lot of the information that is going to be gathered and presented is going to be used pretty much identically in future applications. When you look at all the applications, a lot of it's just repetitive. And so it'll make it easier to go forward as new applications come to us, or as we can identify them. So we'll research new grant opportunities all along, and there's going to be some because there's been a lot of money come out of the Congress this year with the Infrastructure Act and the Inflation Reduction Act that it heavily supports new energy efficiency projects from the household level to the community level. We need to keep demonstrating that progress every 3 months in order to save that $725,000 grant, and we're intent on helping that progress. So, are there any questions?
Before I ask for questions, I'd like to commend everybody on that board. It's a lot of work and a lot of meetings, and I get some of the minutes, and it's a fantastic update, and I'm really impressed at it's great to see citizen involvement at that level, working with government. I think that's the way it's supposed to be, and I'm really excited about that progress. Any questions at this time?
If I may?
Go ahead, Member Atwood.
Yeah, this is fascinating. Are there any examples of successful geothermal in operation at a smaller scale in the area
Yeah, there's been a couple grants awarded recently, and one's at Sitka. I don't have the details on that. They've got a pretty organized city government department with a head that goes after that stuff. It's paid off one. I should have looked that up and brought the details in here. It's a pretty big one. Then, you know, about the time we got the $725,000, the city of Soldovia also got an AEA grant for about $850,000 for a senior citizens building there, and they didn't complete that project.
Oh.
So I don't think that's just the only two.
No, that's good information. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other?
And the Sea Life Center, of course.
Yeah, I'm just wondering, as we're talking about some of these other things, like the community recreation building, at what point do we get you guys or who to start thinking about how we deal with a heat loop project there or some form of alternate energy?
Well, there's definitely capacity along that waterfront to heat a good portion of the town. So this is where we started.
Right.
And this is just, we're pursuing the 4-building project at the committee level, just because we're going after grant money, that's how you, well. But just doing that, I think, would bring that right to the edge of downtown. And if you wanted to, you could drill wells all the way down the waterfront. So there's, you know, I mean, Bruce did a little, quick calculation on that. It would heat like a quarter of the town, something like that. So, I mean, it's something that if you can get a start and you can prove how it works. There's money out there to help communities with this, because it's probably never going to be economical for a community just to come up with the cash. But there'll be a local match. But the whole goal is to make that a no-brainer that we go ahead with it. And if we can continue down the road, it's just like any other utility. Eventually, you can bring it to just about everybody. This is done all over Europe and places like that, where they have district heating systems and they have for years. So all the technology is. Our technology is actually new. The carbon dioxide, it doesn't use a refrigerant, which itself is dangerous to the global warming in the atmosphere. And so that's Andy Baker's got a really good technical background in that, and it could help us with this grant. But they're using refrigerants and doing this extensively in other places in Northern Europe. We wouldn't be the first.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Would you please repeat the website address? I didn't get that clearly.
Just all one word, heatloopseward.weebly, WEEBLY.com.
Thank you.
And if you Google that, you won't get it. I think we can work on it. But if you type that in the address bar, you can go.
Chair Carroll?
Go ahead, Member Jaffa.
Bob, that's a tremendous summary of the work we did. And Bob's work and others on it have added so much to this. And I think the ability that Bob had to present this is indicative of the effort and the quality of people that, not myself necessarily, but the rest of the people who have a lot to bring to this. To answer the board member joining Atwood is, the CO2 system is right down the street. There are a couple innovative components of this. The CO2 application is one, although it's gaining traction in a lot of places. As Bob said, is somewhat of an environmentally friendly heat exchanger refrigerant component. The other is extracting heat from the curtain of gravel along Resurrection Bay, which is slightly unique, but not completely unique. So we have both the research component of this project that makes it very interesting to grantors, as well as the practical application of the technology. One of the things that this group has done in recognizing the constraints of the resolution that formed it is try to build a network, and that's what this particular grant application is doing. It's bringing different people together. For instance, the Sea Life Center is certainly got a demonstratable project, and Tara Reamer is giving us a letter supporting that. Kathy Stock at the AvTech is helping develop a program to help train a future workforce in this technology. We're hoping that we can frame the grant in a way to facilitate that sort of thing. And what Bob didn't quite mention, and what's important, is this particular grant is a first one, but this grant is a two-phase grant, and the first component is a zero match. And we're trying to load as much into that zero match as we can in a practical way to take advantage of that. But the second part of it is a normal 50-50 match, which would be the nuts and bolts of it. That doesn't mean that we want to stop with this one grant application. We intend to look for additional ones. So I think that Mary Tugas deserves a tremendous amount of credit for the effort that she's put into this. And I don't know if Mary's hopefully enjoying a cruise, but she has, I mean, I've gotten emails in the middle of the night, and I know that because I'm up in the middle of the night. And so she deserves a lot of credit for helping spearhead this thing.
That's fantastic. Member Paquette, you have a question?
What do you see as the next step?
Well, the next step is just we're going to work through this grant out, and I think there's going to be more coming up. And so, as we identify them, we'll work through PACAB to pursue that, which is what we were tasked with. I'd also, besides Mary, I'd just like to say it's been a pleasure working with the whole group. It's like we're all long-term Steward residents that really care about the town. So it's kind of a fun thing to do, once in a while.
It's a diverse group
We
too.
work well
That's
together.
exciting. Any other questions? Thank you very much for your time and to come in, and we look forward to hearing more progress. On to the next item on our agenda, which is to discuss the Seward Marine Industrial Center Bench Housing Feasibility Report. That is in our packet. There's a lot of it in our packet. We also have a letter from a citizen addressing that feasibility report, which I think, I'm not sure if it's in the packet. I got it as an email. So I'm assuming everybody else did too. Do we have anybody from administration still on the line?
Yeah, we're still here. I guess I would just say a couple things about this report. Number one, it's a draft. The copy on page 127 of your packet is a draft. R&M will be down on the 26th of September at 5:30 to present the information at this council. A couple things about the project. Number one, the reason this feasibility study was undertaken was that this project has been on municipal land plan for several decades, and so the question was asked, is this a feasible project? And so that's what we're trying to answer here. The answer is yes, it is a feasible project. The total estimated cost is $114 million, which I guess, if you're wanting to know what Jeanette and my take on this project, is this a very expensive project? Is it possible? Yes. But it's probably something that's going to end up on our legislative priorities list for a number of years, and looking for a congressional appropriation for the utility expansion. So that's a couple things. I guess the only other thing is, we talk about housing all the time in Steward. We recently had Senator Dan Sullivan and the head of the whole Coast Guard, the Coast Guard Commandant, were here. And the very first question that they asked the mayor when they came to visit Steward is, do you have the housing necessary if the Coast Guard were to decide to bring not only a new fast response cutter, but also an icebreaker? It's one of Dan Sullivan's top priorities. They're literally, the first thing I asked us was, do you have housing to support the Coast Guard if we need to bring a new icebreaker to Seward, which is their preferred option. Right now, the only icebreaker is on the West Coast, I believe, is in Seattle. And so Seward's on the short list. And so we know housing is an issue for our community. And this is one of the many possibilities that our community has available to us. I ran into Carl Hughes a few weeks ago over at the post office and, kind of welcome back from my hiatus. And his first question was, how's it going on housing projects? And I know that that's something that PACAB is very, very interested in. So I probably can't answer all of your technical questions. Those are probably best left for when R&M provides the presentation on the 26th. But you guys have talked a lot about the need to create more housing for normal everyday working folks in Seward, and meeting the needs for our teachers, for our doctors, our nurses, and just the other needs that our businesses have. And this is one of the projects that is available if there's an appetite for it within our community. So just wanted to give you guys a status update. Again, this is draft, it's not finalized, and I would encourage you guys all to tune into the council meeting at 5:30 p.m. when R&M presents the information.
Thank you for that summary, Stephen. For those of you that couldn't hear, that is the council meeting on the 26th at 5:30 p.m. If people would like to listen in and get more information on the bench study. Is there anybody? Yes, Member Paquette.
I'm looking at this diagram that's the subdivision or proposed subdivision, and maybe it's in here somewhere, I apologize, but how many lots or houses is this complete project looking at?
Let's see, 727.
Okay. What was that number?
It creates 674 lots.
Okay, 674 lots. So this comes back to a question or a suggestion that I had a while ago. Do we have the answer to the question, how much additional housing does the community need?
So that's a good question. At this time, we don't have data. I mean, we anecdotally know that we're hundreds of homes short, but I guess a couple things. One, and that's actually a topic when we met with Kat a while back, and we talked about just the need for better understanding our business community and what needs are out there. Because, I go back to Nicole Lawrence, she estimated 250, I think was just her anecdotal, based off what she's seeing in her clientele. So, we know we're at least a couple hundred homes short from market equilibrium, and I like the way you framed it, Board Member Paquette, because you said, there is a difference between actual demand and, quote, needed demand. And I guess it just kind of depends on what you consider, like, our needs are, because we need doctors, nurses, teachers, police officers, dispatchers, etc. If I went down and I talked to a charter operator, they would say they have a need for more deckhands. But do we say that's a need or not? I don't really know. It's definitely something that we've talked in the chamber about, and we acknowledge that we need to do some survey work to get more and better data.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Go ahead.
So this is Board Member Smith. Kind of curious on how the size of this this feasibility study, the 750 units, seems like an awful lot to start with. That's kind of my first question: is how did they come up with that that scale? And second, similar to the concerns of the other subdivisions we discussed, it's $169,000 estimate per lot. And adding building costs to that, I don't see how, I mean, obviously this would be adjusted for future $2040 or whatever, the project timeframe would be, but does that address the affordable housing need? And I would tend to think it does not. So that's what I have.
So I guess just to answer your questions in order, in terms of the number of lots, that's just a rough estimate. The only reason there's an actual number listed in there is the purpose of the feasibility study was to examine the utilities necessary. And obviously, to some degree, that's going to be a function of the number of homes and residents that are being served by those utilities. And so it's certainly not the proposal, it's just a concept. And there is some degree to which you say, well, that's a lot of homes. But again, it's very shallow soil, bedrock that would have to be blasted to build the road. And so if you're going to do it, you need to do as many units as possible to make it as affordable as possible. Which kind of ties into your next question, Ben, about the affordability. And I'd go back to what I said when I said why we undertook this project was the question was asked as a municipal land plan, which P&Z is working on, is this a feasible project? Well, the answer is yes. But the answer is also, it might be unaffordable. To your point, if you look at the cost just for the utilities, I mean, $169,155 per lot just to break even on the utilities and the road, that might not, I guess to me, that may not be affordable. Affordable means vastly different things to vastly different people, but I think for most of us, that's not an affordable number. But again, the question that we told R&M that needed to be answered for the municipal land plan is it possible? Not necessarily is it affordable. So the answer is yes, it's possible. Is it affordable? Probably not.
Go ahead, Member Jaffa.
This is Board Member Jaffa. I will make comment later on this, but a question on the process. Because this is somewhat disconnected from the main area of Seward over here, and it's along Nash Road, which is outside of the city boundaries, it will have a huge impact on whatever land ownership is along Nash Road. What is the process of approving this? Is it a city vote? And if it's only a city vote, what voice will those residents along Nash Road have?
So I would say that's going to be a council decision. Like I said, the city obviously doesn't have $114 million. So what will likely happen subsequent to this report being finalized is two things. One, we'll go update the muni land plan to reflect the information that was provided by the feasibility study. So that's one thing. And then secondly, it'll go on to the legislative priorities. Well, it'll be on the proposed 2023 legislative priorities. What the council does with that resolution, they can remove it or not, choose to put it on the priority or not. But that's going to be a council decision. I hope that answers your question, Bruce.
It does.
Thank you, Stephen. Any other questions? Okay, it looks like there aren't any more questions, Stephen. Thank you for continuing to be available through that process. And once again, like I said, if anybody's interested in hearing more or commenting to the council, that's on the 26th. That will be presented. We'll move on to informational items and reports. There's no action. We just want to go over these really quick at this time. So on page 131 of your packet, we have the PACAB meeting schedule. And then on page 133 is the priorities and goals. I've been approached by administration with the suggestion of updating our calendar as we move forward. We're going to have a meeting where we populate our calendar for the next year. But the suggestion was made to go to one scheduled meeting a month, and then keeping the placeholder for that second meeting, but only using it if at the previous meeting we determined that there's some activity that needs to happen or action that needs to happen. So that suggestion has been made. We can talk about the merits of that now, or we can think about it. A decision is not before us right now. It is a suggestion. And I think it's something to keep in mind when we are setting our calendar for the upcoming year. As we're looking at filling spaces, it might make sense to make that decision at that time when we're putting things into specific dates and seeing what's filling up our calendar. Any other comments on our calendar in the upcoming year? Go ahead, Member Paquette.
I was wondering if, so I did not know that they had made that suggestion. Basically, you're saying they're suggesting we just drop the work sessions if we don't need them?
Correct.
I don't know, I've sat on this board.
Sorry, Madam Chair. That's not that we just don't need them. If we need them, we can schedule them as we go through working on something. But sometimes there's, we had gaps this past year that we didn't have anything for for the work sessions. We need them, absolutely, schedule them, that's fine. We're just stating that, as we need them to make them happen.
So, thanks, Norm. So for clarification, the idea is that instead of saying we're going to have 2 meetings a month, which is and then we have our hiatus in the summer, so I think the concept is that instead of saying we're going to have whatever it is, 16 meetings, we say we're going to have definitely the 8 or 9, the 1 per month, and then as we're filling up our calendar, if it makes sense, we calendar it then to have 2 meetings. And then say we decide that in January we only need 1 meeting. I'm just throwing that out there. But then January 1st we decide something's come up, we can still have that meeting and come up with the agenda for it. But it just, and like I said, I think this is a decision we should talk about when we're actually filling our calendar, so that we don't force things into a spot,
Right.
And free up people's times. But at the same time, make sure that we're giving ourselves enough time, because I know for me, there's certain things on the agenda that I want a work session to go over. I don't want the discussion and the work part of it to happen at our meeting, and for those, it definitely makes sense to have a work session. So I believe that is what the suggestion is pointed towards.
Okay, so my thinking had been to modify those work sessions and have them be special meetings instead, where we then go into a committee of the whole, so that, because what happens is we do a work session and then we can't take any action or make any decisions or anything until the next meeting. Whereas if we were to change it and adopt the special meeting / committee of the whole format, we could have a work session within that meeting and then come out of the work session and actually be productive instead of having to wait another 2 or 3 weeks. That's my thought.
Are we having this discussion, Madam Chair, are we having this discussion now?
Well, if you have any input about it, it's just an idea that's being thrown out there. I think that we should decide what the calendar should look like when we have our meeting where we're filling up our calendar.
Right.
Because I think that's the time that it makes sense to decide what we need and what we don't need.
Right.
It's just an idea to have in your head, because that is coming up in the next couple of months. We've only got a few meetings before we have to repopulate our calendar.
Right.
And so if you take this calendar home, we have the 2022 calendar and we have our priorities and goals. So if we look over the things that we have to do, plug those in, the things that we want to do and plug those in, and people come back with suggestions of other things that maybe aren't there, because at the same time we'll be talking about our priorities and goals for the next year. So just making sure that that we're not filling time to fill time, and that.
Well, because I might.
Go ahead.
I think I don't know how long I've sat on this board. It seems like more than a few years. Darrell and I were on the board, Bob and I, we were all on the board at different times. And I don't ever remember that we were able to finish the work, the simple work we had, and the number of meetings that we had. And the idea that we could somehow reduce meetings and still accomplish what I think our service can offer to the city. It seems a little strange to me that could happen. So I don't know. I go along with whatever the group wants to do, and we'll make whatever contribution we can. But in a very, very ambitious future that we're looking at and needs in the city of Seward, I can't imagine how we could scale back and still accomplish our goals.
Thank you very much for that input. I don't think it's something that we should, obviously we're not going to make a decision on it right now. It's a suggestion that's been made and I'm passing it along. So I think the important thing to do is everybody take it back with us as we look at our priorities and goals and our calendar, and when we come to that time, just keep in mind that that's an option when we set our schedule. In the city code, we are only, it just says to meet. It doesn't even say monthly. So we can make that schedule whatever we need it to be. So historically, it's been this 2 meetings a month, and if that continues to make sense, then that will be our decision. Any other discussion? Go ahead, Mr. Ryan.
Yeah, if I might just direct a question to staff, following up on the suggestion of having special meetings. We have that capacity now, I assume. And what does lead time look like for calling a special meeting and public notice and such?
By city code, special meetings require a 24-hour notice.
Oh, so we're rather nimble then. We can call a meeting if we need to. Okay, thank you.
Yes. Okay, so if there's no other comments, we'll move on to the priorities and goals. We talked about this a little bit earlier in the year, and going into this next year, I'd really like to look at our priorities and goals, and what I've spoken with administration about is making sure that, in my opinion, our priorities should be the things that we are required to do every single year. There's certain things that we as a board are required to do every year, like go over the SMIC plan, go over the harbor plan. I feel like those things should be listed under priorities and not our goals. That's just our job. That's what we're here to do. I feel like our goals should be things we as a board or the citizens of the community have brought to us and see as a way that we can assist city council, assist the community in becoming a better place. So I feel that moving forward, we need to adjust this list of priorities and our short-term and long-term goals to reflect a terminology that reflects the actions that we're trying to take. And so I just wanted to make sure everybody had these in these packets, and then we're looking over them before we go into our next round of setting our priorities, and then making sure that when we set some long-term goals for ourselves that are things that we all hope to accomplish for the community, and break those that they're measurable, that they have action, that they're things that we can do to affect the city, and that we break those long-term goals down into short-term goals, moving us towards those long-term goals, and put those in our short-term goals, and making sure that our goals are something that are measurable, that shows activity, that are, some of our short-term goals right now are very nebulous and don't actually, it's just sort of an idea of a thing. And so I just want us to take some time, knowing that is one of our duties that's coming up in the future, is to look at this list, and so I just wanted to make some of those comments about it moving forward. Any comments on that? Norm, are you still on the phone?
Yes, ma'am.
I know when we talked earlier this summer, there was also something that we were looking at needing to change the schedule of so that it fit better with the city financial planning calendar. But I don't have those notes in front of me. Do you remember off the top of your head what it was we were discussing that might need to be changed?
Yep, I'll let Stephen talk on that one.
Okay. Stephen, could you please remind me?
Yeah, so we just, I don't have it in front of me, but I believe that this is going to come back as a discussion item at your October meeting, and then you guys will pass a resolution at your November regular meeting for your goals and priorities. That'll then go to city council probably at the second meeting in November, and then so that city council can pass your priorities for 2023 before the new year. There's been instances in the past with boards and commissions where we didn't get that through the city council approval process until into the new year, and so we need to have that as a discussion item in October, and then as a resolution on your November meeting, so that we can get that all finalized, so that you guys aren't having to, get that approved in like a January meeting. So it'll just be a few weeks earlier this year than last year.
Okay, thank you for clarifying, Stephen. So, what's happened in the past, our priorities, we normally establish them at the last meeting of the year, December 21st. And at that point in time, the city has already done all of their budgeting. So if in our priorities and goals, we want to put something that requires any kind of funding, money, that kind of stuff, we'll have already passed the financial cycle for the city, and then we have to work backwards. So what we're looking at is moving that priorities and goals from December 21st up until up to the October meeting, so that we can set our priorities and get them to city council. And maybe there won't be any financial things, but if there are things that are going to require finances, we want those approved before the finance cycle is completed.
So we're going to do that on the 5th of October?
Yeah, so we would need to move the priorities to the October 5th meeting. Do we need any kind of motion to change this calendar? It's just something we do. Okay. So the other things scheduled to happen on that October 5th meeting are the deciding who's going to attend AML in Anchorage, and we have discussion of the climate action plan on there, but we've also had some discussion about the appropriateness of that in the way it's stated. So I think it will tie into discussing our priorities anyways. It is listed on our priorities and something we need to discuss how it's worded and where it falls on that list. So any comments on, I know that was a bunch to kind of throw at everybody. Any comments?
Just a broad question, excuse me. How many of these priorities are set by council?
So technically, in a way, all of them.
Okay.
We come up with this list of priorities, goals, and long-term goals. We submit it to council, and then it's approved. Council can come back and add things, or before we go through this session, they can say, here are things we would like you to focus on. And so they have to approve this, our priorities and goals, as we present it to them, but then they can also direct us. So it's a back and forth.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other comments or discussion on our priorities and goals? Member Jaffa.
I'm a little confused. I looked at the 2022 goals calendar and priorities, and then I look at the printed calendar, and they don't exactly overlap. There are some. There is the one PACAB meeting, usually early in the month. For instance, today's meeting is 7th, and then the 5th of October. But there's nothing on the 21st, for instance, that's reflected in the priorities calendar. So what calendar are we working off of?
So just for clarity, in the calendar we were provided, the September 21st calendared work session doesn't show up. And then,
None of the work sessions.
yeah.
They've been
Is that,
removed.
Madam Clerk, is that normal?
I think that there may have been a little bit of a different communication to the clerk's office than what you just provided. So we were asked to remove the work sessions from the schedule
Okay.
going forward, and that's why they're not there, but I'm gonna put them back on.
Okay, that would be great.
Okay, so
I would like, and I think the committee would like to leave the work sessions there until we can have time to look at the whole calendar. Please correct me if I'm wrong.
Until we decide not to.
Okay.
Yep, that's great.
So that leaves us with, right now the work session for the 21st is to invite renewable energy users to share their experiences. I would really, I don't necessarily have connections, but I know that there's a bunch of people in town that have put up solar panels, and that some of them have been connected to the loop and some of them haven't. It would be interesting to hear progress on who's actually able to use their panels and what they're seeing, especially over the summer months, and then who's still waiting for that. I think that would be an interesting thing. I've also seen, I know there's this isn't renewable energy, but when we're talking about sustainability, there's the project going on over at SMIC with the plastics that are being, I don't know if you guys are aware of that, but there's a gentleman going in there to do a plastic project. And he's been accumulating plastics all summer, and he's going to turn them into lumber. And so that's something that might fit into this work session. And then I know that a couple of different entities did recycling throughout the summer using specific cans throughout the city. And I know there's been some discussion about, right now those are being privately funded partly, and I know there's some discussion about asking the city to help provide some of that recycling cost coverage. So that might be something that fits in there too. I don't know if anybody else has any suggestions for that work session.
Madam Chair? Just the wording here says invite renewable energy users. That could mean that's when we just determine who to invite. Interpreting that, I think that's when we want to have them here, correct?
It is when we want to have them. This would be a discussion.
Do we have a mechanism in place for having everybody included that would like to be for that?
We don't, and that's why I wanted to bring it up right now, because that is 2 weeks away.
Can I make a suggestion on that?
Please.
Could the utility department send out a request that they share their experience? The ones that have applied for the net meter agreement, would that be an appropriate method? Stephen?
Stephen, are you still on?
Yes, Ben, can you restate your question?
In order to reach out to all of the community members that have installed renewable energy systems, would it be appropriate to have the utility department send out an invitation to all the applicants that have applied or have installed their systems?
You want to invite them to attend the PACAB work session on the 21st of September?
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, we can probably do that.
And would the utilities director be able to give us information regarding where we are in the process of hooking those people up and kind of maybe give us an overview of where we are in that project from the city side?
Yes, I don't know. I can't speak to Rob's availability on the 21st.
Or maybe even just a quick couple bullet points on how many people have applied and how many have gotten their, just a little bit of information from the city side.
Yep, we can do that.
Madam Chair?
Hold on, Member.
Yeah, we're concentrating a lot on people who are using solar systems, tying into the electrical grid or standing alone. We also need to include households. There are a number of them in the Seward area that have geothermal heat systems in their house with groundwater. And we should include those too.
Do you know how we could identify or?
I have
Okay.
no idea. I know who a few of them are, but I can make personal requests, say, hey, why don't you come and tell us something about what's.
Yeah, absolutely. Member Jaffa?
I think the goal is to try to get some sort of a response from the community about how renewable projects are going. This board has made efforts to encourage that development. There are, believe it or not, still an active newspaper in this town that does have a good outreach. And I believe the reporter would be more than happy to put something in there inviting community members. Rather than having the utility department send out mailings to everybody, I think there may be some other public outreaches that could be utilized at Chamber. And certainly local resources like Phil Calusa, who is all about the heat pump system, Mike Insulaco, who's involved with solar, the Renewable Alaska. Those are people who have their finger on the pulse of what's going on.
Okay, so, Member Jaffa, would you be willing to reach out to said newspaper and?
That's the way to do it. You delegate, I got it.
And ask if a reporter
Sure.
would be willing to, okay, so then.
I'll report to the chair. I'll report to the chair.
Then the next step in that would be, so we've heard a couple of people that are interested in hearing from different user groups. So, but we do also have a short calendar of time with that meeting coming on the 21st. So, Madam Clerk, what would you please give us a deadline to have speakers that we know are wanting to come and address us? Obviously, as always, other community members can come and sign in to speak, but if you have somebody specifically identified who wants to come in and who you want to hear from and wants to come in and speak to us, what date would you like that name by?
Actually, I'm going to put that question, if you wouldn't mind asking Norm Regis,
Okay.
because would be in charge of that organization, please.
Norm, are you on?
I am, what organization?
Well,
It works.
if somebody from Sustainable Seward was going to come and talk about how their project went over the summer, or if somebody who had solar panels or some other method of heating agreed to, if one of the board members finds somebody who they'd like to hear from and they agree to come and address us, what date would you need that name and information by in order to?
So it's a work session on this product, and then people can get up there and talk about it. If I'm correct, it should be nothing, no agenda statement, no nothing. It's a work session. People are allowed to come up and talk about it. You guys are talking about, solar panels and stuff like that. They're welcome to come up and talk, I do believe.
Okay, so if somebody's going to give a presentation, we don't need them on an agenda? If somebody's
coming.
coming.
I don't believe so, not for a work session.
Okay.
Madam Chair, can I make a suggestion on this? I appreciate all of the projects and the innovative things and visions people have. I would tend to want to keep the discussion related to things that this group has worked to enable, like specifically the net metering and possibly heat pump rebates. Just for this work session in the interest of time and kind of to judge how our work has progressed. So those are some barriers that PACAB identified that we're specifically on. And I think that would be, we can have a showcase of other types of projects, but I feel this group does tend to broaden its scope a lot. And just kind of narrow in on what did we do, what did the utility do, council, and how that had a measurable impact for this session only. And if we want to open it up broader at some point, then it certainly would encourage that too.
Thank you, Board Member Smith. Member Paquette?
I'm wondering if we want to invite Darian Draper, who is like the local installer for heat pumps, and get feedback from him on.
I can tell you what Terry's, he's busier than a one-armed pipe writer.
I know.
You could certainly reach out to him and let us know what you
Okay.
hear back from him.
Okay.
So.
Okay.
Okay, so that will be our work session for the 21st. Please, when you're reaching out, we will be limiting that to, based on Member Smith's recommendation on people that have applied to use the solar power
And net metering.
And heat pumps.
and heat
And
pumps.
heat pumps, yeah.
So then our October 5th meeting will be the priorities meeting and the AML conference in Anchorage. The October 19th is to, work session at this point in time is to review the harbor plan. And the November 2nd meeting right now is to provide recommendations to the Board of Fisheries. And I think that will be the meeting where we will do our, finalize our goals and priorities. And obviously, if somebody comes to us with a recommendation for the Board of Fish, we can look that over and take that in, should it come up at that time. But I don't see this board being a board that would make a recommendation on its own to the Board of Fish, though I see us as possibly supporting a letter written by another user group. So any other comments about priorities, goals, or the upcoming calendar? Okay. That brings us to the close of business and to board administration comments.
Or citizen comments?
Citizen comments. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to speak? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to board and administration comments. We'll start with you guys if you're still there. You want to go ahead, Norm? Any comments?
Yeah, this is Norm. I don't have anything. Stevie doesn't have anything either.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. So that we'll move on to our board comments. And we'll start down at the end with Member Fred.
Well, I'm glad to see everybody's back and in good health. I guess we gotta get to work.
Thanks. Member Hughes?
Yeah, again, to reiterate what Fred said, yes, I'm glad everybody's back. With that being said, unfortunately, Madam Chair, I'm going to be missing the next two council meetings, the November meeting and the October meeting. I have planned travel and I will be gone. I will make the December meeting and then I leave again for 2 weeks. I'm doing something very special for my family. I'm taking them all to Michigan for Christmas. That's everybody.
Nice.
Yeah. So.
Thank you. Member Paquette?
It's nice to be back. Thank you to everybody for the vice chair nomination. And I look forward to getting some work done.
Member Atwood?
Thank you. And it's already proved to be an interesting body of work that we're looking at. The Steward Marine Industrial Center Draft Development Feasibility Study. Talk about ambition, right? This is big. But as planning goes, it's better to plan than to not. So anyway, I guess I don't want to extend our meeting too long, and I'm happy to be aboard. Thank you.
Nice to have you. Member Smith?
Thank you. This feasibility study there with the Nash Road is a fascinating kind of what if scenario. I definitely encourage anybody that hasn't in the audience or online to take a look at that. It's an interesting thought exercise if nothing else. And then regarding the heat loop project, I want to thank the ad hoc committee there for their huge amount of work they put in and research. I'm kind of, the what next question is definitely, comes to mind is that we gotta answer that somehow. How do we get all that work put into motion into a project here? So good to see everybody again, and thanks.
Well, I have a few things I'd like to say, and I appreciate, again, the board being here and all, and full. With as new member Atwood, I feel that we have a very, very positive group with, again, a diversity of experience and mindset. I will hope that Board Member Hughes writes us his thoughts on the things, even if he can't be here, so that he can participate in that way. I'm glad that Board Member Atwood brought up, and Board Member Smith both brought up the bench project, the SMIC bench project. Yeah, it's ambitious, but in my mind, I've seen a number of projects along hillsides that at one time people said would never be done because of the cost. I mentioned, I think, to Daryl Schaefermeyer that I hunted in an area in Washington that was a remote hillside that's now lined with houses. I remember the tank farm at Valdez, which was not going to be built on, and they decided they needed a tank farm there, and they mowed the hill down and put a tank farm there. So things can be done. Whether they're justified has to be determined. One of the important things to remember is knock down roadblocks or log jams. If you have a desire to grow or develop, you got to find out what's stopping that growth or development and attack it. And housing is that thing in Seward. We have a rich economy here, and we're blessed with a marine harbor and a fishing industry and a freight industry and now an educational industry. And we're going to have new developments like a hospital and possibly a rec center. These all need housing. So $160 million for development, $120 million for development of infrastructure, $170,000 a lot. Sounds like a lot of money. What's the cost if you don't do it? What's the impact? Is it atrophy? Do you basically put your hands around your neck and choke yourself off? So let's think big, and the worst thing to do is plan for the immediate thing, and then you miss the opportunity to grow past it. And everywhere you look, there's always a slight overcapacity. If you build for the specific capacity, you're behind the curve. So that said, I will mention one other thing on where do we go from there? I'm glad Bob was able to speak for the ad hoc committee. There are two things that we need to look at. One is, during the summer session, the ad hoc group pretty much went along as a subset to PACAB. That was just because of necessity. I think, number one, there needs to be a little bit more communication with PACAB during its regular session. And the next thing is, there is a funding opportunity that is actively being engaged. There is a contract that the city has authorized with Your Clean Energy. There's a contract with R&M to write a funding opportunity. So these things are in progress, but that's not the end of it. There are future opportunities that we will look at. And hopefully in concert with PACAB, that ad hoc group can find many more opportunities. Long-winded, three-phase response. Thank you.
Thanks, Member Jampa. It's great to see everybody, and like I briefly stated before, I will be taking 6 weeks of vacation, so I will also miss the work session and the October 5th meeting, but I will leave my my thoughts on priorities and goals with you before I go. I Also want to thank the ad hoc committee. I said it many times, I believe that's the way government should work. I believe it's the way citizens should work. When you help each other out, I think everybody benefits, and I think on both sides, I think citizens benefit from feeling like they're involved, and government benefits from having additional labor that's helping move the community forward. So thank you to everybody who are making efforts there. Then I'd also like to echo Member Jaffa's comments that while the cost of projects sometimes seems daunting, you have to look at the cost of not doing them as well. And looking at who we want to be in 25 years or 50 years is going to be based on the decisions that we, the members of the community, make today. And so I think it's important to keep that in mind when we're looking at the decisions that we make on a daily basis, where they're taking us. So I want to thank everybody for their time. It's great to have everybody together again. And I will adjourn this meeting at 1:26.
Perfect.